Hello guys, welcome back to another Lumley trading video. In this one we're going to be going through our day trading recaps. Again, we post all of this in the Discord before it happens. So let's get started. This is where we finished yesterday. So again, you can go and check yesterday's recap if you want to see all the trades up to there. Now we're starting, again, this is always Eastern time. We started at 7 p.m. last night. So that would have been when the futures reopen. And there is some gaps we can normally look to fill. So in this case, we were looking at the NQs, and what you could see is, again, you had gaps created here. We traded down to these. We didn't really trade that so much. But what we were looking at is we then created two new gaps here and here. We were looking more for a long off of this low, and we could start going to fill. So again, what happened? We showed you the entry there, and that's exactly what we got. So you get your long entry here. And then again, you're using these as targets on the way up. Again, this is going to be gap fill from kind of before the futures closed last night. T2, which is going to be the VWAP extension, and then VWAP is just targets. Because again, you are trading pre-market. Sometimes it can be hard to make a move as big as that. So you do want to be locking in profits along the way, or at least at a minimum, moving stops to break even. So there we go. Again, we can see it play out. This was the entry restated. What happened? We hit that near enough to the penny, and this is why I preferred the long entry, because it was on the VWAP extension. That's this small green line here. So the 2 deviation from the VWAP extension. So getting in along here, we could have nice tight risk and run this upside again. TP1 at VWAP, TP2 at VWAP extension, and then gave it a bit of room to find that final TP at 926. Again, I was surprised how quick we did hit that. But we did, and again, if we go back on the futures, you can see this because it will be drawn on our chart anyway. So we go over to the NQ futures, you'll be able to see this is exactly where we've done it. Go on to 1 day, 1 minute, just so you can see. So again, the same setups. This was exactly here on the chart. This was our long entry, trading up to where? VWAP extension, and then the gap fill. All 3 targets were hit. Now, what else were we looking at? That was the main overnight moves, and then while this happened, we did create new gaps to the downside, which we could look to trade. Now, again, this was getting late. This was 9 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget, I'm living in the UK right now, so that's going to be 2 a.m. my time. So again, I was kind of winding down from trading, so wasn't trading it myself, but I put the trade plan out there for all people to look at if they wanted to trade a trade plan like that. So again, what is that? Again, you need to find areas to short. You need to be having the risk management. So I couldn't give you exact entries. Actually, we kind of gave this as an entry to try it out. Again, stops on the high, you run it down. Again, that was quite a decent move. We said entry, you're kind of getting in around here, as we showed you on the Discord. There's still 11 points, so you're probably at least moving stops to break even. Probably would have stopped out, and it did push that bit higher. But again, it's all about finding new entries. So you can be looking for gaps to be created and then a gap fill. Or you kind of just keep trading kind of a key level. For example, you can trade this, which ended up being quite close to that high. Again, just going to be some sort of a supply demand zone, or you can go into kind of one of the dip highs. So again, finding entries is always going to be a bit more down to personal preference. I didn't like this downside move as much just because we didn't have gaps for entry. These moves are clean because it was a gap to gap. So you can use a gap to entry, a gap to exit. In this case, we didn't have a gap to entry, so it wasn't as clean. But again, we were talking about the setup anyway, shorting down from this area and then overall targeting here, which again, you get your bounce and you start filling gaps. So again, basically the pre-market was just the same thing on repeat, just going gaps to gaps to gaps to gaps to gaps, really just waiting for them all to get filled. So we won't bore you anymore with these pre-market gaps. And what instead we'll go for is what we were looking at kind of coming into the open. So again, this was posted at 10:12. What we had is we have this range. We expect this whole range to get filled. So on SPY, we were looking at that. Again, we'll pull it up anyway. And what you can see, we're getting into these extended zones. So this is when we can get some good risk reward, especially on the options. Didn't trade this one on the futures, but could have traded it as well. But on the options, it was easier to manage the risk. And I was looking for this last bit of the box to essentially fill. So again, if we go over to the chart, where was this? If we go to SPY, Actually, we'll get the futures there, and we'll get SPY over here. So what you can see is, again, that's going to be this box here. When did we call this out? We called this out at 12 minutes past 10, which was literally here, this candle here. And then how do we know it would nosedive into this area? Okay, we don't know it's going to nosedive, but we do know there's a high probability this box will get filled. So that is what got filled. And again, that was our main trade plan for the day. Options on that did around a 60% move from when we called it to where they hit. Now again, we go back into the Discord. That played out again. Good timing. Posted it just before we got down there. And that was our A-star setup for the day. After that, we're not really too fussed on the moves we get. It's more, can we just run a bit of these profits and try and push this day into an even bigger win? So again, looking at the NQ futures, you had the statistical mean. This is using standard deviation channels, and it was just really showing as a nice resistance. So again, if we go back over to the NQs then, that was at this level here. Again, keep just providing nice entries there, and there. Kept coming into VWAP entries. Again, if you keep pushing price to this level, you are eventually going to break it because it's showing that buyers want to break it. So as soon as the sellers ran out, obviously you're going to break through, but it did provide some nice shorts again to at least fill that gap at a minimum. That can always be an entry to fill the gaps, and then targeting a bit of VWAP. Again, it would have been nice to get the whole run down, but we didn't quite get that on that move. So when we traded this, we took a bit of profit there, a bit of profit in the VWAP, and again we had a tiny bit size running for these final gap fills, but they didn't quite fill, so that gets stopped out there. And then we can look for re-entries, and where these re-entries, we had a gap from the 23rd of July. So looking at the futures, that can be your nice new entry to trade this downside move into these gap fills. Again, we can see there was 3 gap fills there. Didn't quite fill them all. We had 3 left to go. And so what happened, we got a bit of a bounce, got kind of coming into a bit above the VWAP into that mean area. And if you come over to QQQ, you can see, is there anything that would have helped for those kind of high entries? And again, on the QQQs, it was even cleaner. You have the statistical mean and the VWAP, which was actually at this range. So again, the QQQs was a bit of a spread out. QQs was a cleaner entry, but again, did provide that entry down to fill these final gaps. There you go. Now what's happening? That is basically what we got up to in the Discord, essentially. Now, what you can see is as well, SPY will go through this play in a second, but I will go through this. Haven't posted it in the Discord just yet, but we will. We do have gaps to fill down here on the NASDAQ and here on the QQQ, so we should expect to see these fill. Now, what can be a good entry for these? Mean, again, worked quite nice as a nice pullback. If you're in that trade now, you would have break-even stops. But really, the way I'll trade this is we are already up quite decent for the day. I'm not too fast. I'm going to head gym now, so I'm not going to be watching the charts actively. So what I've got to do, what I have is you can see the alert here. If we start seeing Qs push to these VWAP extensions, this can be some entries. Again, if I'm at the house, I can only trade the options. I can't trade futures when I'm at the house. If so, I'll be focusing on the options on the QQQs just to try and run. Again, we probably, if we're going from here, depending on what time we hit this, we might not be able to reach all the way down to these gap fills. But if so, we can just look, and then we have magnets to the downside on both the Qs and the futures. So we should get a nice pullback down to this level. And again, it can kind of target VWAP again, will kind of be that main target, because I think it's unlikely that we'll push all the way from that high all the way down to that gap. Because again, you need to think what's reasonably acceptable. When we have these magnet levels like gaps, we also need a reason for them to be able to reach them. And in the case like this, QQQs, if we're getting a short kind of at this extension level, back to go and fill that first gap is near enough for a 1% move. Are we going to do that on no catalyst in the last hour or two of the day? Unlikely. So again, it's then changing our targets. We have these reasons to enter, and that is our other reason to enter. Then it's also then just making more reasonable targets. What are we actually likely to hit in the day? And that's going to be more for VWAP and mean, which is kind of the area I would target if this ends up playing out. But again, we haven't got to that area yet, so we'll see if it comes to entry on those. Last thing I posted in the Discord, don't know if we're going to get the entry. So we talked about how we wanted that box to fill, that range to fill, which we got completely. Last trade, basically whenever you're seeing these levels here, these are kind of short levels, so short, long, long, and you can see they all played out quite nicely. We're waiting for one more level to hit. All of these levels can hit, as you can see. That level's been hit, that level's been hit, that level's been hit, that level's been hit, that level's been hit. We're waiting for a hit on the 423. Now, we don't expect price to necessarily hit it, so we don't trade towards it, but this is a reversal level. So we come down to here, that is where we can look for a nice bounce play. Again, it's all off using reasonable kind of sense. Right now, it's 1:17 market time. We've got about 2 and a bit hours until market close. You know, if we come down and hit this level at 3 p.m, then maybe we won't trade it because there's not too much time to give us upsides. If this hits by, 2 o'clock, then it's something we can look to trade. But I do think this may be a no trade now. It just seems like we have to move a bit too far to be able to get a trade opportunity on this. But just putting it out there, if we do hit this level today, that will be a long opportunity. Again, depending when we hit, probably just targeting that first level, just because, again, it will be later in the day. We don't have as much time for these 0 day to expiration options to play out. But overall, that was a trade recap. Again, as always, this is all posted for free in the Discord. Again, the Lumley Trading Discord. Normally posting these in the day trading tab. So if you want to see what we're looking at, check the Discord. Free, and it's in the description.